right. Well, we moved through that last bead in a very detailed fashion, right? Maybe a little too detailed for some, like my wife. But this time, let's speed things up a bit and walk through the process more quickly and touch on a couple of things. Practice, practice, practice. Okay, so I want to light that torch. I've got my oxygen generator running. I've got my valves closed, right? I'm going to put the flame directly underneath the exit port of the propane, and I'm going to open the propane just a tad, a little bit, and then add my oxygen and find a nice spot. Not too hissy, not too gassy. Don't like being gassy. Alright, and then I'm putting the lighter in a safe spot, away from the workbench, hidden, so as to not create any issues, right? We're going to be holding the mandrel. Really, it's resting on my pinky. I'm pulling the glass from the glass rod using these two fingers, working a little bit closer to the front rather than to the back, because that'll give me more control to cleanly pull that glass thread. Okay, I'm going to be warming up my work area, the bead release, but I don't want to hit that flame only in one spot, because that could weaken and crack that bead release. So from now until the end of time, I'm rotating and I'm bouncing in and out of the flame from behind the flame. Okay, and I'm looking for that flash of orange that will indicate, there it is, that the work area is hot enough to accept the glass. Okay, and just so you know, warming the bead release and warming the glass rod are not two separate events. If I'm sitting down to make a bead, I do them both at the same time. I'm just breaking it down into steps for the purposes of the tutorial. So really, you sit down, you grab your two items, and you go to work, right? I'm warming up the work area on the mandrel and my glass rod. Remember how I was introducing it to the flame as well, so that it doesn't shoot little bits and pieces around. I'm pointing it away from myself, okay, and down towards the work surface, so that if little pieces jump, they'll jump here. I don't enter at this angle, because then the pieces will jump towards my unprotected arm. Okay. Once I don't start low either. I enter the flame higher so that it's cooler, and then I slowly introduce that glass rod. Okay, so that it becomes acclimated to the heat. Once I know it's not going to be poppy, I'll move it down into a comfortable work position. My goal is to build up a glass ball on the end of this rod, the gather, and so to do so, I'll angle that glass rod a little bit so that it can more easily ball up. And I'm not rotating the glass rod, I'm just rocking it back and forth. It'll start to drip, right, and then I'll catch that drip with a half turn. Wonk. Right? Drips, and then I catch it. And if I keep doing that, I just sort of rock back and forth, and at the same time making sure that my bead release work area is flashing occasionally. You don't want to overheat it, but occasionally. So now I've got enough glass. I'm going to transfer that glass. I'm going to leave the flame. I'm going to pause, let that glass cool, touch, pull to create a thread, and then I'm pulling the glass from the glass rod with my left hand, and I'm laying the glass down. I'm creating the width of my base, at the moment, right? So it's not in one place, because then the bead will just it'll just be very tall and thin. So I'm moving my left hand left to right to guide that thread left to right, so that it lays out in a wider fashion rather than just one spot where it'll just get tall. Okay? Now, remember the bead? Up, 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 occasionally. Up, 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 coming in and out of the flame, rotating, keeping it warm so that it doesn't cool and shock, while at the same time building up my next gather of glass. Okay? So I'm going to leave the flame, pause, let that glass cool, then touch it, and then left to right, thread and bobbin, send that glass across the surface of the flame, the surface of the bead. We'll do one more. Remember the glass rod itself, always stationary at the back of the flame. Okay? All of my movement comes from my left hand. We'll do it one more time. Pause, let that cool a little bit, touch, and then turn. Take advantage of the fact that you've got some molten glass ready to travel. Woo! Alright, so now, when I finish up sending glass, okay, I always do the same thing. I bring the bead and the glass rod close together, and I get the flame in between the two, and that cuts the thread. And that's good, because I always end up with these clean ends on rods that I've already used. Okay? And that's good in the sense that it's easier next time when you go to use it. It probably won't be as poppy. It's also, see, like a rod, a fresh cut like that almost always will shoot little bits and pieces around. If you have a rod that's been used before, you can just enter the flame with that pre-worn or pre-melted end, and it's less likely to pop. Okay. Also, you see all these ones that I've used before, they're all nice and rounded. So when I'm reaching in to grab glass, I'm not sticking myself with sharp bits. So anyway, it's a good idea to finish clean like that. Get that flame in between the two, cut the thread, and that'll leave you with a nice clean end on your glass rod, which I'm putting it down. It's hot, so I'm always putting the hot end out, and I'm always picking up from the cool end. Okay? And now I want to switch to my strong hand, and I do so over the work surface rather than over my lap, because I don't want anybody to get hurt. Now, one thing I didn't touch on in my last video, the first video, is how to hold the mandrel during the melt process. Thing is, it's not the same for everybody. The purpose, or my goal during the melt process, is to work very slow at the beginning of the melt process, because I want to allow that glass to head towards as it melts, it heads towards the heat source, and then it starts to drip, and I catch it with my very slow rotation. Hold your mandrel nice and straight, right? But one thing that happens, depending on how you hold your mandrel, at the end of every rotation, you go turn, and then when you reach around to start the next one, you'll jump. Turn, jump, turn, jump. And the thing is if you do that and you get all the way down to where you have a molten ball of glass, on the mandrel. At the end of every rotation, you'll have this little jump, and that molten glass will jump with it, and you will never have a truly balanced and centered bead. So you have to find a way to be able to rotate smoothly like that without a jump at the end of every rotation. I do that by holding the mandrel still with this finger, which I think is my index finger. I don't know. That one, and then I turn with those two, okay? If you can do that, it works great. I've found, though, teaching that most people aren't that comfortable in the beginning doing that because it's just not comfortable for them. You can see how I'm holding it. It's resting against the back. I'm turning with these two fingers and I'm holding it, keeping it from jumping with this finger. If you can do it, that would be great. If you can't, a lot of the times when I'm teaching, what I'll do is I'll just tell somebody what the goal is. The goal is to cleanly rotate without any kind of a jump. And then allow them to try and find a way, because often they can, and their way is just right for them, and that's a good thing. If you can't find your own way, another way to do it that works as well. You see, I rotate the same direction all the time. I'm always turning. What you could do instead of doing that is just rock it back and forth in the flame. So you're not actually rotating, it's a half rotation. Half and back, half and back. And that can allow you to and do it, working on the surface of the flame, slow at first, allow for the process, okay? Don't try and rush it. Don't heat the core. Heat the exterior towards the core, okay? Try it that way if you're having trouble controlling it, because really the best way to work with this process, facilitate the process, is to have a very incremental turn at the beginning, super slow. Okay, glass is heading towards the heat source, it's dripping, and I'm catching it with my very tick, 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 tick. It's like the tick of a clock. It's a very incremental, slow turn, and that will facilitate the melt process in a very controlled way. And then as the glass becomes molten, it'll speed up and you roll with it. But in the beginning, if you just go very slow and just turning it just a millimeter, tick, 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 until it becomes ready to flow free, which is what it does. It'll get to the point where it's molten all the way to the core. And notice that I'm always working on the surface of the flame. I want to make sure that I'm heating exterior in, okay? And you'll get to that point in the process where you can feel in your fingertips that it's balanced and centered, and then you come away and you don't change your movements, and you allow for it to go from a liquid to a solid, so that it's a balanced and centered solid rather than a balanced and centered liquid. Okay? And then once it goes from orange to dark, you know that you're good to go. And it's very consistent. You always, once you get your process down, I know at the beginning it's not automatic. If you really look at the details and really think about how the melt process is working, pretty quickly you can get to that point where your base bead, this melt process results in a really nice balanced and centered bead with nice dimpled ends. course, everything takes practice. So keep practicing, and then it will become second nature, which is a good thing. One thing not to do is, say I'm warming this bead and it's liquid, right? But I'm not quite sure if it's centered, because I'm not trusting my fingertips to tell me. A lot of people will do this. They'll look at the side to see if it's centered or not. If that's a ball of molten glass and you turn it to look at it, it will shift. Okay? Not quickly, it's not going to race down to your finger, but it's going to change shape, and it's going to pull away. So the act of looking at the side of it is going to create the problem, right? Feel it in your fingertips. Believe how it feels, because it's really the best indicator. It flows beautifully when it's balanced and molten. If it goes chunk, 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 and it's like top heavy or bottom heavy, then you have to continue working on it. Maybe add more glass, because one thing that happens that will drive you nuts if you don't really recognize what's going on. Let's say the width of this bead is wider, right? And there's not enough glass on top, height-wise, to be able to round out and center itself in a balanced fashion. So if there's not enough glass, you can work that thing until the cows come home, which I don't know when that is, but it's not anytime soon, and it'll never become centered and balanced. So in that case, add some more glass. Put some more glass on it so that there is enough glass for the process to give you this nice balanced and centered foundational type bead. Okay? Come away. Let it cool. Hey, cool, man. And then you can admire it and go, ooh, ah. And then, because I'm not decorating this one, I'm going to let it cool a little bit, and then pop that into my insulating material. I'm going to leave that there for about an hour or so. We're good to go.